And here to answer that question is the principal from D.C. International Advisory, Christian Whiton. Christian, it's great to have you back with us here on America's Forum.
Great to be here. Thanks.
All right, Christian's coming to us from Los Angeles live right now, and reports have indicated that a majority of people illegally crossing the border are coming from Central America. But Chris, considering some of the documentation they may have, if they have any at all, is probably at best questionable. How do we really know where these folks are coming from? How do we know somebody saying they might say they're coming from Guatemala, but they might actually be coming from someplace else like the Middle East?
That's right. We have really no way of knowing. I mean, a number of these people are voluntarily surrendering to authorities. Others are caught, but a great many are not. And if you're a terrorist thinking about a way to mount an operation in North America, it really, I mean, are you going to go through the problem of trying to recruit a lone wolf, someone who's unreliable, someone you don't have a relationship with? Are you going to try and bluff your way through customs at JFK or another port of entry where you need a complicated backstory? You need to have washed your travel history. You may need to have obtained a different passport, or are you just going to walk across the southern border or liaise with the coyotes, with the human traffickers, with the drug traffickers who seem to have just freedom to move throughout that region? I think you're going to choose the last one, and that's a real fear.
And so what else, besides looking at these documents, are immigration officials doing to determine the country of origin?
You know, I don't think they're doing very much, frankly, because if you don't have access to these people, if you're just taking their word, if you don't have cooperation from law enforcement agencies in Central America, then, you know, you just don't know what you're going to get. And you see the consequences of that. Not only have we already uncovered terrorist plots that involved the cross-border mayhem on the southern border, you also have a crime spree. Texas Governor Perry reporting that over the last 5 years, 3,000 Texans have been murdered by illegals. 8,000 have been victims of sexual assaults. Liberals have, of course, disputed those statistics, but haven't offered any competing statistics or any evidence that those are untrue. So, you know, just as a real law enforcement nightmare. And as I said, we already have some indications that terrorists are looking at this route.
Well, let's talk about Governor Perry a little bit more. He says border protection needs to be a record high number based on what you said. He wants, as we've heard him mention before, more National Guard troops in Texas. He wants another border surge, if you will. But is it time for folks in the GOP maybe to start calling for something more specific, like putting the Border Patrol under the Pentagon's control?
Yeah, something needs to be done, but, you know, frankly, whichever government agency runs it is going to be ineffective if we have a signal coming from the highest political level, from the White House, that basically it's okay to come in through this channel. Now, President Obama has said he's going to work to send these people, this latest surge of people from Central America, back, but then you look at reality and you see that's not happening. Are they being pushed back at the border? Are they being deported rapidly? It's not happening. And so I think you do have governors along in the southern states trying to be creative, trying to do as much as they can, but it's just very difficult because this has been a federal issue to do a whole lot. So, you know, I think what you need to do is make the threat of deportation real, whether we intercept an illegal immigrant at the border or whether we detect them inside. Certainly, if you are caught committing a crime inside the United States and you're found to be here illegally, it should be a pretty quick one-way ticket back to your country of origin. That's not the case right now, and so you have this magnet effect, and it's one that, you know, again, foreign terrorists are going to be looking at more and more closely.
Well, Chris, Republicans in Congress are taking a lot of heat, as is the president, from critics because, you know, Congress failed to pass an emergency immigration bill that could gain any traction in the Senate. Who's to blame for this? Republicans, Democrats, everyone, the president?
I think Democrats are to blame, and that's just not me being a partisan. It's if you look at the place where laws go to die in Washington, it is the U.S. Senate, as run by Harry Reid. You know, this is a crisis that President Obama created with his dreamers and with his signaling to Latin America, to anyone really who wants to come across our border, that there are going to be avenues to stay here permanently, the talk of amnesty. And now he wants not to solve the problem, but several $billion more, including for things that have nothing to do with the border. If you look at some of the various bills that were placed before Congress. So, this isn't rocket science. Every single country in the world controls its border to some extent. Most do it very well. We do not. We're the United States. This shouldn't be that difficult. Again, all you need is no border is completely secure, but you can make it pretty darn secure. And then if you have that plus internal enforcement, if you go abroad, any country in the world, you get pulled over, you get a citation, and they find out you're in the country illegally, well, you're out of there. Really, we are the only advanced country that doesn't do that. So, we can point the finger all we want, but this isn't that difficult a problem. We just need the political will. And unfortunately, it's not just Obama, frankly, who is being very soft on this issue, but also many on the right. The Wall Street Journal editorial page, big government Republicans, if you will, who want cheap labor, combining with Democrats who want the votes. And unfortunately, it's the people in the middle class who are being impaired by this.
But Chris, isn't, people that are for the president would say that they're being very critical of him because it's kind of one of those no-win situations where he's tried to pass immigration reform and he keeps getting shut down. Then if he goes above Congress and does an executive order, then he's abusing his powers. So what would you advise the president to do in this situation?
Well, this is an intention. This is the reason we're a presidential system with a Congress, and we have separation of powers, and we're not a parliament. I mean, President Obama in his press conference got up and says Congress has failed to act. Well, actually, Congress refused to act. Bill Clinton could have gotten immigration reform through. I think George W. Bush could have gotten immigration reform through, given today's factors and given divided government, if he controlled one house and not the other. But President Obama has refused to compromise, and he has no credibility. There's no trust that if you made a deal with Obama that he would fulfill the parts of the deal that he doesn't like. So I think if Bill Clinton were sitting down with John Boehner and Harry Reid, he could get something and there could be an assurance of improved security at the border, but some sort of path to, whatever you want to call it. Not the case with this president. So it's really not a failure of Washington. It's his failure.
So if you were the president, though, what would you do?
If I were the president, I would secure the border and I would create mechanisms for internal enforcement, for the deportation of people who are here illegally and who are committing crimes. That doesn't mean we're sending 11 million people back to their countries of origin, but it does mean we're creating disincentives and we're sending a signal abroad. And then you can create things like permanent residency for people who have abided by the rules and paid taxes, things like that. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen in 2014 or 2015 or 2016 because Obama has no credibility on this. Really, I think he is through on this. It's just, he has really poisoned any relationship with Congress. Republicans are set to pick up seats. So in my mind, this doesn't get fixed until we have a new president.
We already heard the president, some of his advisors talking about the fact that they're going to run out of money to deal with this situation. Of course, Congress is on that 5-week recess. Do you expect to hear the White House start talking about national security now, crying out, hey, we need this money for national security interests. We're going to have to do something. Is that the line you expect to hear coming from the White House very soon?
I think so. We saw this with Libya and Benghazi, where they tried to blame it on Republicans because there was, because of the minor reductions in growth to the federal budget, saying that Republicans had underfunded security when, in fact, funding for embassy security has increased more than tenfold over the last decade. Really, the executive branch has enough leeway, and with a giant budget that they have, trillions of dollars, the ability to move some funds. Congress needs to be notified in some cases. Congress needs to give approval in some cases. But this isn't a funding problem. It's a policy problem and a political problem.
All right, well, a political problem that seems to be moving and working against Democrats as poll numbers have changed a lot of the way the American folks feel about this. Christian Whiton, thanks so much for being with us. Always great to get your take on things.
Thank you.
All right, Christian Whiton joining us there from Los Angeles. Interesting take. We've discussed the national security implications of this. Will we hear more from the president now as he looks to find funds for Border Patrol, start talking about potential national security risks on the border? Is he going to try to pull that again? Often co-opting a Republican message, trying to use it for his own benefit.
Interesting take there.
Intrigue ensues. Of course, much more to come here. One of the folks we're going to talk about coming up here today on America's Forum about this immigration issue is Pat Buchanan. We mentioned his new column out today. What exactly did he mean by Obama-amnesty? Obamnesty? We'll talk to him about it coming up.